Hey, what's up, mortals? It's Miggy Sawdust here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 18 of What If Izuku Got One for All Early. Just wanted to greet you all by just saying, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. Let's get started.
Kirigiri, I want you to leave with everyone that's here. I want this brat dead, and I want to do it myself.
Kirigiri faced Shigaraki, questioning his choice. But, Shigaraki, are you sure? There won't be anyone to back you up. The malicious tyrant threatened him by raising all 5 of his fingers right in front of Kirigiri's face. Shigaraki didn't even bother facing him when doing so. This left the foggy villain speechless. It shook him to his core.
All you would do is just get in my way, so don't question my leadership ever again.
Kirigiri summoned a massive portal, warping everyone else to a different location. Yes, sir. Shigaraki stood there for a moment before hunching over and coughed up enough blood to fill a tub. The blood began to melt through the rooftop as his body began to dislocate and grow. Muscle fibers broke through his skin as his face formed into something resembling more of a Nomu. Shigaraki took deep breaths to make sure his body was fully adjusted to his new form. Spiky protrusions grew out of his neck and formed into wings. Meanwhile, Bakugo and Shoto arrived. They managed to outmaneuver the portal and slip by. During this grotesque transformation, Izuku smiled at both of his friends before grabbing both of their shoulders with his broken hands, and shared one for all with them. Izuku, Bakugo, and Shoto took a more aggressive battle stance. Midoriya cranked up one for all at full cowling to 90%, while Bakugo and Shoto could only safely work under 30%. Though before he could even react, Shigaraki's hand clasped Izuku's face and flew off with him at high speeds, barely giving the trio any time to react. Izuku was caught off guard, but managed to grab a finger with both hands, keeping it off his face, preventing himself from being disintegrated. He slammed Izuku's head against the pavement as he continued flying before letting him go. He grabbed Izuku by his ankles and flung him straight into another building. Once Shigaraki landed, he turned around only to be approached by Bakugo, leaping at him like a wild beast. The atomic blonde launched a full explosion right at the mutant villain. From within the smoke, Shigaraki's arm swiped out, backhanding Bakugo in the face, sending him into a tree. His back smacked against the wood, causing him to sprawl to the ground, knocking all the wind out of him. Izuku climbed out of the rubble, cocking his fist back. Black Whip tightened its ties around his joints and bones as the output of Izuku's power increased. He threw his punch straight at Shigaraki's direction. A shockwave emitted from his fist, sending debris backward, and the air collapsed in on itself in a line. The air shot through Shigaraki's lung before the wind expanded from the hole, spreading it out as it forced Shigaraki to flip backwards before he latched onto the floor. He forced his body to fight back against the wind pressure, crawling in the opposite direction. Flames emitted from Shoto's left. His flames were sucked in by the rogue winds of Izuku's punch. The monster was caught in the middle of this flame cyclone. His skin began melting off and regenerating over and over. Izuku was breathing heavily as that previous punch pushed his limits, even with the assistance of Black Whip. His ulna and radius bones in his forearm expanded outwards from each other as they fractured. I'm ending this today, Shigaraki! Shigaraki's crooked smile bled through the flames as he flipped onto the side. Shoto retaliated with pillars of ice. The ice made contact with the deviant, but he easily grabbed the ice. It quickly shattered his skin, but his grip strength outweighed the volume of the ice, crushing it with his bare fist. The rampaging villain took a chunk of sharp ice and stabbed Shoto in his left shoulder. The shard fragment of ice poked at Shoto's heart. He was then kicked aside from the mutant Shigaraki.
All of you are just insects. I feel like a kid playing with a magnifying glass.
Bakugo recovered himself, focusing his explosions, and shot a few AP shots right at Shigaraki. He stood there, tanking the shots. Some of them exploded right on contact, creating a cloud of smoke, while others shot through his skin. The holes left behind regenerated. Shigaraki flew straight up into the air before he dive-bombed straight back down, raising his elbows to his face. When he hit the floor, a massive shockwave occurred, causing the floor within a 1-mile radius to fragmentate. This pushed the three heroes back as the bits of broken floor flew omnidirectionally outward from Shigaraki. As the debris flew, the chunks would make contact with the heroes. Shigaraki rose up from the crater he made.
I hope you can see how pointless all your attempts are. All these wannabe heroes coming out of the woodwork just to die. You three are the prime examples of things I hate. Trying to live up to the name All Might so bad you forget about the dangers of the world. Well, let me reteach you what life is really like under this stupid hero society.
Izuku leapt forward, punching the ground, which caused a small crater while elevating just slightly. Black Whip unwrapped itself partially from a few of Izuku's limbs and wrapped around Shigaraki as Izuku landed on the ground, flipping the giant over his shoulder, tearing open some muscle fibers as he screamed with vigor. He continued the momentum in a circular motion back down through the broken rubble on the other side of him. Shigaraki ricocheted against the floor and slid into the pavement. Izuku didn't stop there. Black Whip re-wrapped around Izuku for support before he twisted Shigaraki's wrist, throwing him into a skyscraper. The unparalleled freak sat there for a bit before rising out of the rubble. Shigaraki sighed before wiping the dust off his shoulders. He was starting to grow annoyed. Shoto kept a hold of the spike of ice impaled into his shoulder. Blood dripped down his torso. Bakugo stood on top of the building that Izuku threw Shigaraki in. He fell headfirst, and as he passed Shigaraki, he launched the biggest explosion he could manage, with the added bonus of One for All, blasting it straight through the building. Shigaraki took all this punishment as Bakugo landed on the floor. As he plummeted, his arm went numb as a few joints fractured.
Ah, damn it! Did I get him?
Izuku threw his fist towards where the explosion occurred. The air pressure trapped the explosion inside, blowing the entire building up. A metal rod launched out, flying by Izuku's face like a lance. A purple-haired kid, indulging himself with a dirty magazine, walked along the rubble. He wasn't paying any attention to his surroundings. He was met with a cruel fate as he turned into a kebab, impaled to the wall behind him. A massive cloud of smoke was all that was left of the building. Izuku was hoping that this was it. The sun finally rose. It had been a long night. He couldn't go on for much longer. Izuku's spine was almost exposed as flesh surrounded it from Shigaraki's initial attack, skidding him across the street at high speeds like that. With Midori in terrible shape, it was unsure even to him if he could continue like this. Shoto was out of commission. If he attempted to melt the ice, it would risk blood loss, and if he didn't melt it fast enough, it would impale his heart. Shoto began pulling out the chunk of ice from his shoulder, yelling in pain as he did so. He immediately started bleeding until he froze the open gash over, preventing blood from spilling out, and put pressure on the gash as well. The silhouette of Shigaraki began to show itself from within the smoke. Their eyes widened. After everything they put him through, Shigaraki was left unscathed. Shigaraki's body deformed even more so. His limbs grew larger, and his bones outgrew his skin, pointing out as spiky protrusions. Izuku couldn't help but feel helpless. Regardless, he couldn't let this thing rampage. He wore a brave face as One for All's lightning started peeking around his body. He then dashed towards Shoto and Bakugo, picking them both up and transported them to a safe distance. Bakugo refused to stay behind. You three have done enough. Typical of Class 1A to be reckless like this, but I'll thank you for it later. Manama gave a smirk to the three of them as Izuku stared at him. Now is not the time for your bullshit, Manama. Can't you see we're on death's door here? We need to figure out a way to stop his regeneration. Manama chuckled a bit. Relax, Midori. I didn't come all the way here to start spouting insult. I did recently lose my teacher, so I want a piece too. What can I do to help? An idea manifested in Izuku. He nodded to Manama. I have a plan, but you're just gonna have to trust me on this. Manama nodded, and the plan commenced. Izuku first siphoned one for all out of Shoto and Bakugo, letting them just rest while he went to finish this once and for all. Next, he took Manama with him, but dropped him off somewhere just out of Shigaraki's line of sight, keeping him hidden. Izuku then slowly approached Shigaraki. His head snapped from right to left as if he lost himself. Izuku began to pick up the pace, and so did Shigaraki. They both clashed in the middle. Deku threw a few mighty kicks at Shigaraki as the villain retaliated with a single punch. When they met, the air pressure was so dense that the light of the sun refracted from the epicenter, blinding everyone in the vicinity as a shockwave passed. When the light came through and readjusted, Izuku laid flat on the floor with Shigaraki's fists against his chest. The force was strong enough to rip Black Whip. It lost all support around Izuku's body. Shigaraki began punching over and over and over at the adolescent, each punch causing him to rebound between the floor and his fist, dribbling like a basketball. Deku went limp, and the cretin would then start to hover his hand over Izuku's face.
Finally, the fruits of my labor are about to be fulfilled.
Just before his fingers made contact, Manama snuck his way around to Shigaraki, touching him and copying All for One. Sealing the quirks as well, but couldn't quite make it in time for decay. This was because the moment Shigaraki was touched, he instantly turned around and swiped his fingers against whoever touched him. This turned Shigaraki back to normal, and he spat out a ton of blood since his body rapidly devolved. This forced Shigaraki to go unconscious. Manama looked towards the unconscious and badly beaten Izuku, and began tearing up as he slowly wasted away.
I'm sorry, Vlad-sensei. I'm sorry for not doing this when it was you.
Manama sat next to Izuku. He gazed up at the sky as he continued to cry, but his face also showed a smile. A smile only an accomplished, self-sacrificing hero could muster. He collapsed into chunks of ash and was swept away in the wind, back in the battlefield where everyone else was sent to. Outside of a few major injuries, none of the heroes or villains were killed. In fact, once the word spread about Shigaraki's defeat, the villains dispersed without a trace. The Nomu shut down and went limp, as if they lost motor function without a master to guide them. A week passed, and it was time for grief and reflection. Manama and Vlad's funerals were held simultaneously by UA on school grounds with a giant ceremony to remember their brave sacrifices. Everyone in attendance tried to hold back their tears during the speech Manama's parents gave. We would like to start by saying thank you all for coming. He loved you all dearly, even if he didn't show it all that often. That has been made evident by his sacrifice. We couldn't be more proud to be his parents. He showed courage, vigor, and strength in his final moments. We would like to say, it was too painful to continue for his mother. His father gently embraced her and finished off the speech. They both walked off with immense grief. Aizawa was next to commemorate Vlad. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for coming today, to mourn two great individuals we lost in the past week. I'd just like to say that Vlad was always sort of a rough person to work with. But he was only that way to help other people grow thick skin. He would be proud to know how many students were saved thanks to his sacrifice. It was never our intention for things to get as out of hand as they did. But it's because of tragedies like last week that prove why heroes are crucial for this society. We look out for each other, and we do our best. After this ends, I'd like everyone to walk away from here to respectfully mourn those we lost. But keep your hopes up for a brighter future because of their sacrifices. Aizawa began to make his way off stage. It was time for Bakugo to give some words. He tried to hold strong in front of everyone, to help them push through.
I don't know where to start, other than saying he saved my life. Our lives. But he gave up his in the process. I've never been someone to be thankful when saved by others, but I want to thank my fellow student and hero. Because without him, we wouldn't be here today.
Bakugo wiped the tears from his face, trying to force his emotions back in after finishing his statement. Some time passed and the funeral concluded. Everyone went home mourning their friend and their teacher. Meanwhile, back in the city's medical facility, Izuku was strapped down to a medical bed. He was put under temazepam, a sleeping agent. He had tubes running in through his torso, keeping his oxygen alive. He was intubated. The IV strapped to his veins pumped programmed stem cells into his body to help repair the damage he suffered. His jaw was supported by tiny stents, keeping it in place. Inko stood outside her little boy's hospital room, crying to her handkerchief. "He'll be coming out of this just fine, don't you worry, Mrs. Midoriya." "I sure hope so. I warned him before, you know, about being a hero and how much I didn't like him putting himself in danger like this." Dr. Ujiko patted her shoulder gently before continuing on. "He should be admitted from here in about 3 months' time. Please, catch some rest, miss. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope you enjoy that. Before you leave, we'd just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below in the description, so feel free to check it out. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all our other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will also be in the description below. That's all for today, so goodbye and have a divine day.